Welcome to BizTech's C-Suite Conversation Show. Our guest for today is Malou Toft. She's the Vice President APAC at Milestone Systems. Milestone Systems is a leading provider of open platform video management software. Now, technology that helps the world see how to ensure safety, protect assets, and increase business efficiency. Now, to tell us more, Malou, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much.
Now, Malou, for a start, could you give us an overview of Milestone Systems and what it does?
Well, I would love to. Milestone Systems is a leading video management software company. We are the #1 vendor in APAC, and we are basically providing the platform that connects thousands of cameras, devices, and other types of sensors that are used to collect data. And then you can, of course, use that data to analyze and become much wiser on what's going on in the areas of your business where you might not have real eyes on the ground.
Now, Malou, so here's an interesting thing. You cover a variety of verticals. It's everything from healthcare to government, cities, hospitality, education, retail, transportation. Could you give us a sense of your footprint in the Asia-Pacific region?
Yes, we have our regional headquarters here in Singapore, but we also have a large presence in South Pac region with our offices in Australia. We have a large team in India, and then we have teams in Japan and Korea. And then we are covering our markets in a channel and a partner model where we are selling through our system integrators and distributors across the region.
Could you give us some key success stories of how customers actually use your product and services? And those could be global stories.
Well, absolutely. And of course, in a world of emerging use of video technology, that is always super exciting to talk about. You can say one of the more traditional use cases is, of course, to use video camera as a part of your surveillance, your perimeter control, if you will, figuring out if the door continues to be closed, if there's no breaking or entering. So the very, very classical use cases of security use cases, of course, is where it all started. So we were part of the transition from analog to digital and IP network cameras. So this is more than 20 years ago. So when this transition to IP happened, then the reach and the usage of video cameras became much wider with the, let's say, the internet boom, if you will. And nowadays we see the use transcending into much more beyond security use cases. So you could still use some of your camera park to help you on the more basic security needs, but you would also integrate, let's say, people counting. You could be doing queue management. You could be looking at customer insights. You could be trying to do heat mapping in a supermarket to figure out how are your customers moving around, are your ideas of how you would like to lay out a shop, is it actually consistent with how people then move around in the real world, who are your customers, and the possibilities are basically endless in this space.
So then you have a suite of products basically that help that. So what's quite fascinating is how the whole camera and IP-based surveillance has gone from very simple webcam technologies to then sophisticated analytics and obviously artificial intelligence. Could you drill down a little bit about that? Because you've already touched on the surface of how companies are now evolving and using your solutions.
Yes, I think one of the key cornerstones of Milestone's business has been a principle of openness. So our platform is open towards third-party integration. So our founders were very early on to create an open API so that you could make these integrations with different types of other systems. That could be your door control, it could be towards audio, it could be various types of analytics. And that of course has accelerated in recent years, which is why the type of integrations we're seeing now are going much more towards the analytics space than what we saw just a few years ago. So for example, we have quite recently launched our Milestone X-Protect Rapid Review, which is a suite of analytics tools that will help you analyze on large amounts of video. That could be if you are in a municipality and you want to figure out where people are making a forbidden U-turn. Then of course to sit and go through hundreds and thousands of hours of video could take you a very long time. It could also be about finding missing people or dogs of a certain color. You could even begin to look at what are the moods that you are picking up, if that is of interest to you. So the analytics are now used both on, let's say, a meta level where you are searching for patterns. And you could, of course, also be at an airport where it's really important to find a missing child or a missing bag of some other kind of, let's say, mission critical event.
Malou, so one of the key things that from what you just mentioned is the first thing that comes to my mind is improvement of law enforcement globally. Could you share with us perhaps some use cases on how this has actually happened with your solutions?
Yes, well, it quickly comes to mind. There was a guest we had at one of our flagship conferences a few years ago. It was a police officer in the US who was talking about how he was experimenting with using the Milestone platform to basically help save time in the police force locally by finding patterns of let's say street traffic, pedestrian traffic in the street to figure out where there might be drugs being sold. Mm-hmm. So by using the pedestrian traffic and analytics, you're able to see over a course of several days where people are actually going, where they are ending up, which could be a complete needle in a haystack if you are looking across multiple streets being overlooked. But you need to figure out where are there patterns, where are people having an over normal traffic pattern towards, and of course this basically helped him, so he didn't have to sit up, all night in the back of a truck with the night goggles.
That's really, really interesting. Now, one of the things, Malou, then is this: for customers who want to transition to solutions like yours, there's obviously two approaches. There's probably an on-premise approach. There's also a cloud approach. Typically, what does the implementation time take for your solutions?
I would say depending on the size of project, because many times we're involved with new buildings, and that's also why we have a huge presence in basically everywhere in the world where we are seeing a lot of, let's say, new construction, new warehouses, new office buildings, new malls, and so on. But as we look at the deployment from the final design is ready, I would say it would normally be up to 6 months in terms of how the final design of the whole building management and security system will be laid out. But that would be, let's say, on a first deployment. If we are looking at a customer site over a long time, we oftentimes see the projects evolving over time. So what used to be a more, let's say, a classical case of security and surveillance, then we see that the next phases of a project or a customer site could be evolving to the next stage where you are trying to make sure that the cameras that you've installed and paid for, deployed, and infrastructure could be used for different purposes. So that could be over several years, because most companies will not necessarily be mature to make use of their video data to this extent if you look 5-10 years ago, but they still have an installed infrastructure that they can now make more use of. So in that sense, as we now see on-premise solutions where you might have an office building and a headquarters, now looking to expand the video management towards retail stores, then you might use both on-prem solutions to cover major sites. You might use a more cloud centric approach towards covering smaller sites. And the beauty of the Milestone platform is that we really allow for this interconnectivity to take place and to have solutions that are, let's say, tailored to the need of the customer. And then that is again honoring this principle of openness.
So Malou, one of the key advantages that I see just listening to you right now and thinking about the challenges around evolving surveillance needs is the fact that for me as a CIO, if we have multiple buildings, security is an issue, I can sweat my legacy assets better because essentially I don't have to throw things out. I can put in solutions software-wise, whether it's on a cloud that link up, for example, different sites, and then use the analytical tools to then analyze how things are working better.
In a way, yes. We allow you to be cost efficient about hardware, about cables that you've already installed, about cameras that you might have had for years. For example, in many countries in Europe, let's say there's a shift of government, you might draw up new borders between municipalities or the different sub-regions of the country. There might be shifts in the political landscape. So suddenly you need to aggregate data on different addresses than you used to. So by having a more flexible software can really enable you to still retrofit and to make use of different parts of an older legacy installation instead of having to rip everything out and build from scratch. So this is a huge benefit when we look at, well, customers alike across the globe, really, because this adjustment and this scaling up and down and even sideways has to take place. It is bound that companies or organizational boundaries change over time.
Now, Malou, give us your perspective, because you were previously, prior to being Vice President of APAC, being appointed earlier this year, you are VP of Europe, Middle East, and Africa. So you have really a global perspective. Give us some insights into some key trends that are shaping your industry right now.
Well, there's definitely a trend of digitizing societies all over the world. And I think this trend that are you can say empowering societies at a different level is something that is on the minds of politicians all over the world, improving the lives of its citizens, and how you still create a space where you can respect the privacy boundaries of individuals. So the trend of using technology to improve lives, but to do it respectfully, I think it's very high on the agenda in especially the European markets. But of course, this is a trend that we see all over the world. In terms of specific verticals, I would also say that the pandemic has obviously brought a new focus to a set of problems that we didn't solve before. The appetite for fever screenings or for people counting, of course, reached completely new levels during COVID. So that accelerated the use of our technology to a very, very large extent.
Now, Malou, you also alluded to the word, and you used the word respectfully. And really that's around concerns, I think, around privacy. How are governments and societies juggling with the fact that video surveillance tends to be a lot more intrusive than other technologies?
You can say it depends on who are keeping the data and what will you use it for, as it actually does with many kinds of data of some kind of personal nature. What we believe in at Milestone is principles of applying responsible use of technology. And that means that we are making sure to design being open to scrutiny in a way. We want to make sure that when we are designing our technologies, we are finding the partners to work with. When we are deploying or helping deploy the technologies that we are part of developing, we want to make that pledge to preach about a responsible use of technology. But with that said, it's very important to also state that we are never the owner of the video cameras in place. We are supplying the software platform on which you can handle, centralize, and manage loads and loads of video streams. So what we do is to, for example, train our partners, our sales partners, our end customers in terms of how they handle their data. And that is something we did to a vast extent in Europe when the GDPR legislation came through. And it's also something that we've continued to do because there are still a lot of companies that might not be fully knowledgeable about what are the data that they are keeping. And even if it's data that they are not needing, you still need to take a stance and to make sure that how you are storing any kind of data, even about your employees, that you are handling that in a safe and respectful manner. So this is of course something that is on our mind because it's also a common theme for the common man.
Now, Malou, I want to now zoom in on you as a leader. You are currently VP of APAC. You transitioned from a role in VP of Europe, Middle East, and Africa. Could you share your experience in terms of some of the different perspectives that you've seen in the APAC region versus in the other regions that you have been responsible for? What's the ecosystem like in APAC?
The ecosystem is we're part of. Well, we basically source a global ecosystem, if you will, because we are developing a globally applicable and in some ways generic software platform. And that actually makes sure that even if you're sitting in Sydney, Australia, and we have a partner that developed a 3D mapping tool in the US, our platform is actually making it possible that we are making sure that technology partners from around the world can connect to the right end users to make sure that the technology, the best fit technology, will reach you wherever you are. So in that sense, I'm happy to be here because we can still make use of a lot of the very exciting partnerships we have all around the globe. But at the same time, one of the things that really strikes me here is the huge opportunity that still is sitting in APAC. Between the Americas, the EMEA and APAC region, I would say that the APAC region is still the one that holds the biggest growth potential because there are many more emerging markets in this region. And as we follow the economic growth, the high-speed internet penetration and the digitization maturity of these markets, the rise of use of technology in society goes along with it. So it's a really, really exciting place to be because of this vast potential and this, let's say, untapped, unleashed potential that's sitting here, especially in this region.
Now, Malou, Milestone has obviously embracing diversity and inclusion. They've got a woman leader in charge of APAC. Tell us a little bit about how you've navigated this largely male-dominated field.
Well, I would say in many ways, coming from the Scandinavian part of the world, I don't really think about it that much because inclusion and the diversity agenda has been a hot topic for many years. I do believe that it's important to have role models, and I can see maybe even more here in APAC than in Europe, having people or employees come up to me and acknowledge that they are appreciating that they can look to more female leaders who look like them, who might have the same educational background as them, are similar age as them. I mean, diversity is many different things than gender, right?
Yes.
And I think that is a development that I'm really happy to be part of, just by being a female tech leader.
Now, Malou, it's been a fascinating conversation, and I really enjoyed this chat we've had. But before you leave, any final thoughts you'd like to share with the audience?
Well, Milestone Systems is about making the world see beyond the obvious, see things that the normal eyes are not necessarily seeing, and the possibilities to use video and camera technology in this sense, they are endless. So I hope that's something that many more of our customers will start using, also in the less traditional security way of work.
Now, Malou, thank you very much for coming on the show.
You're welcome. Thanks.
We've been speaking to Malou Toft, the Vice President APAC at Milestone Systems. I'm Brian Fernandez, and this has been BizTech's C-Suite Conversation Show. This video will be on our website, www.biztech.asia, as well as our social media platforms. It'll also be on our syndication partners, TV stations, radio stations, and website. Thank you very much for tuning in.